a new set of handouts today, money and monetary policy. Uh, as you all remember, last week we concluded the discussion on money, and we had a very fruitful session, although it's long hours, more than 4 hours. Uh, we were able to complete our discussion on money as well as to do some exercises based on the past papers. And I realize most of you liked the session, although it's a lengthy session. And I got some very positive feedback saying it was a very helpful session. And also, you also felt it was very productive because we had a kind of a blend of discussion and the exercises as well. So we'll try to have such sessions in time to time where we can find some time to actively do some past paper questions. Then you will get some practice. We'll try to have similar exercises going forward. Now today I'm extending the discussion on money to monetary policy. Now, when you say monetary policy, by name, it's related to money. Money, monetary means all about it. It's the policy about money. So we will see what is this policy and how it works and why it is important. Okay. Let's move on. Now, we saw in the economy, there is money produced by or injected by the central bank. That is the first issuance of money in the economy as the monetary authority. They are injecting money through various mechanisms. We have realized the central bank can issue money as long as certain factors permit to do so. So these factors we have identified as foreign factors and domestic factors. In particular, foreign assets and domestic assets. The net change in the foreign assets, which means net foreign assets, and the net change in the domestic assets, which means the net domestic assets, will determine the money injected to the economy. That money injected to the economy will be in the form of currency, which means notes and coins, and also some balances of the commercial banks held at the central bank. So those are the two forms of money that the central bank can issue, or that is the use side of this central bank issued money. And we also realize money issued by the money available in the economy is more than the money issued by the central bank, which means when the central bank issues reserve money or base money, it is not the only money available in the economy. We observe there is more money in the system than issued by the central bank. And we realize it is sometimes not only one or two times, quite a few times of money. That money we defined as broad money, which means the entire stock of money created by the financial institutions, mainly commercial banks. They create money through their operations, deposit taking and lending. Whenever a new deposit comes to a bank, whenever a new loan is provided by a bank, it is creating more money. So in that sense, in the economy, there is more money in the form of notes and currency of the central bank, that is the central bank issued part, plus deposits. So that deposit component is larger than the central bank money. So when you get those things together, notes and coins plus commercial banks or other financial institutions, savings, deposits, if they have current accounts, so those current accounts, and long-term deposits, which means 6 fixed deposits. If you add up all these things, then we have a large quantum of money. We call it broad money. Again, it is issued or created in, we call it money creation, right? Remember, when money is multiplied, that is called as money creation, which is basically determined by the central bank. The rate of money creation is determined by the central bank actions. And also I mentioned to you that broad money supply is also issued to the economy through the changes in the foreign assets and the domestic assets of the entire banking system, not only the central bank. Now we have other banks also. The entire sources will have an impact on money. So we have also looked at the money in Sri Lanka, different monetary aggregates. We have reserve money, we have narrow money, we have broad money M2B, we have broad money M4. Those are the four major definitions that we use in the case of Sri Lanka. And we have seen during last year, money has increased quite substantially because of the increase in domestic assets driven by credit given to the public sector. I think there we stop. Now, which is very clear now from that discussion, in the economy, there is a quantum of money. Now I'm asking an issue or asking a question. What do you think? How much money we need? Do you think that we should have too much of money or less amount of money in the economy, or some appropriate level of money is needed in the economy? What do you think? So we need money, where I told you we love money, we need money. Money is needed for transactions. How much money is needed? Lesser amount, higher amount, or some right amount of money? What do we need? What do you think actually? I'm asking this question because we would like to have money. Any response? As I can't see your response, would like to, for someone like to, give an answer that will give some, boost in the morning for me. What is
Appropriate level.
appropriate level? Why is that? What will happen if there is too much of money or lesser amount of money?
If we have too much
The,
of money,
Yes, go on.
if we have too much of money, our currency value will be gone down.
Okay,
Um,
good. I heard another voice.
if we have less money, then our interest rate also gone high when we are do the lendings.
Okay, both answers are correct. Now, what will happen if we have lesser amount of money? We need to have money for transactions, right? So when you have lesser amount of money for transactions, if it is not facilitating our transactions, that is an issue. As you rightly pointed out, that would create some pressure on the interest rate. People will demand more money, and there is lesser amount of money is available, that will jack up the interest rates. That's an issue. And also, on the other hand, it will not facilitate required economic transactions, which will lead to some economic slowdown because money is needed for transactions and economic activity. On the other hand, if we have too much of money, what will happen? Compared to the supply or the output, now you have more money means you demand more. That will create an issue of what? Demanding more goods, although the goods are not available, will tend to increase prices in the economy. At the same time, when you have too much of money, interest rates will have a tendency to go down. Right? In some cases, having low interest rate is fine. It's good. But in some cases, we don't want to have low interest rates. So that indicates too much of money or fewer money, it is problematic. So as someone said very clearly, we should have an appropriate level of money in the economy. Now, why monetary policy comes into play in this scenario? Money has a clear link between prices in the economy. So price change we measure in the economy as inflation using price indices. Price index means you do a survey, you identify most important goods for a basket, and based on that basket, you calculate a kind of a base year for all the prices, and compared to that base year, you monitor whether the prices of that basket has gone down or gone up. So that change indicates the price increases or decreases, in other words, inflation or otherwise. So inflation is measured by the changes in price indices. If there is a continuous increase in prices, you call it inflation. This is not only one price, as I said. You look at a basket of prices means you are trying to understand or gauge the price level in the economy, general price level in the economy. Not only one or two price, not the price of a pen or a book or whatever. You take a cross section of prices means you are trying to measure the general price level in the economy. So if the general price level is increasing over a period of time, which means not only on one day, you have to have at least 2 periods to measure inflation. So if you look at price change in 2 periods or over a period of time, you call it inflation, right? So it's a very important term that matters to everyone. As I said, it is measured by the changes in price indices. Now in this chart, we have price indices for Sri Lanka. The mainly used price indices in Sri Lanka, we have two major price indices to measure inflation, that is CCPI and NCPI. CCPI means Colombo Consumers Price Index. There you have a basket of goods and services of the people in Colombo district. We call them as households. You measure the price behavior of the goods and services based on a set of households in the Colombo district. NCPI means National Consumer Price Index, where you measure price changes in all provinces. The sample is bigger than the CCPI. Both are used to measure price changes. So this inflation index or inflation rate, we normally call it as headline inflation. headline. Why we call it as headline inflation? This captures all the prices in the basket. In that basket, we may have food items, we may have energy, we may have transport, telecommunication, education, clothing, various areas. I think in CCPI we have roughly 11 categories. Even the tobacco, alcohol, that is also captured. Why? People consume those. So if you calculate the inflation rate for all these goods and services, you call it headline inflation or total inflation. Now, sometimes this headline or total inflation can be misleading. Why it is misleading? Sometimes there could be a price pressure due to a sudden change in prices. For example, let's say tomorrow rice prices reduced by the government, or it is increased due to another reason, a sudden basis. Now that is not because of people's demand. That is an administrative decision, or could be due to weather. Similarly, tomorrow the government decides to increase petrol prices. Again, that is not a natural phenomenon, that is administrative decision. So sometimes if you take these prices into inflation, then compute inflation, you will see the inflation rate does not reflect actual price pressures. So in that case, you might remove such price increases, food price increases, energy price increases, artificial increases. And you can calculate inflation index, you call it co-inflation, right? So if I define headline inflation, that is total inflation for price changes of all prices in the basket. Co-inflation is the inflation rate calculated by removing volatile price items or administered price items from the basket. Sometimes,
Excuse sir, can you repeat again the co-installation again, the definition?
yes, co-inflation is the inflation calculated sorry, by removing volatile or administrative prices of certain items. Okay.
Yes, sir, thank
Sometimes we call or refer co-inflation as the demand-driven inflation because it is reflecting the actual price pressures coming out of demand. When people demand, if prices are going up, that is actually real inflation rate. So co-inflation is a measure for that. So in Sri Lanka, we calculate headline and co-inflation for CCPI, for NCPI, which means although I have in this chart, we have headline, right? So keep that in mind. In this chart, we have headline. So CCPI and CPI headline inflation is presented here. Sometimes you will see inflation is going up, going down. Now this year, we can see 2020 inflation rate was basically around 4 to 6%, right? Now it has come down by the end of last year, and in 2021 we can see inflation has basically increased again. This is mainly due to increase in food prices, right? So we can see some pickup in headline inflation. Now, right now in Sri Lanka, inflation is closer to 6%. Okay. Earlier, sometimes back in late 90s, in 2000s, we had very high inflation rates, more than 10%, 15%, even 20%, even 25% higher inflation we had. But during last 10 years or so, more than for 10 years, our inflation is now below 10%, mostly around 5 to 6%. Time to time, we can see some pressures due to some food item pressures or due to some other reasons. So this is headline. Similarly, we can have co-inflation also. So if you put co-inflation rate into this chart, it will also move, in a similar trend, but maybe at a lesser magnitude. Lesser magnitude means sometimes, for example, here we have a pickup in inflation, but co-inflation could be less than that, right? So if you read chapter 7 of the Central Bank Annual Report, you will see this very clearly. So what I want to highlight here in this slide is inflation is an important phenomena, macroeconomic variable in an economy, right? So the point why we are taking inflation here in our discussion, it has a relevance to money. Money and inflation is related. How it is related? If you look at this chart or the diagram, you will see how it happens. Now, money, as you know, circulating at a constant speed. I hope you remember this equation mv equal py, the Fisher equation. In this equation, we assume this v is not changing, constant. Circulation is constant, right? And also we assume output is constant. Production of goods and services cannot be changed in the short run. Very quickly, you can't change it. It will take some time. So based on this, if you look at this diagram, we can assume money is circulating at a constant speed, which means velocity is v bar. And as a result, if you put more money into the system, which means if you increase this m, what will happen? People will have now more money in their hands, own pockets. What will happen when you have more money in your hands? You will demand more goods and services, which means your aggregate demand now will go up, but your aggregate supply does not change. It is constant. As I told you, you can't change this y in the short run, y bar. So you have more money, you demand more goods and services, means your aggregate demand goes up, your supply is constant. What will happen? It will lead to a situation that too much of money chasing fewer goods and leading to increase in prices. That causes price increases because you cannot expand money supply, goods in the short run. So that leads to increase prices, means inflation. So if you get some example, let's say you have money, 100 money in your economy, right? Then you have, let's say, coconuts production in the economy. So let's say coconut production is also 100. So you spend 100 money on 100 coconuts. So the price will be, let's say, 1 to buy these coconuts. Then let's say your money doubles. You have 200 now, but your coconut production will not change. It's the same. Now what will happen? Now the price will change. Price will also double because production does not increase, money has doubled, the demand has doubled. So the point is excessive money is creating inflation. So excessive money creates inflation. Why? Excessive money creates high demand. So I think that is the reason someone of you said we should have appropriate level of money. Not too much money, not fewer money. We'll have to have some required amount of money in the economy. So if you go to the next slide, here we will see why it is needed. I think some of you already mentioned more money means that erodes the value of money. How it happens? More money means more inflation that erodes the value of money. Purchasing power of money gets reduced with high inflation. Now here I have a few examples here to show you how inflation becomes very ruthless and disastrous, reducing the value of money. Now if you look at this first chart, this is inflation rate in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe inflation, you call it a hyperinflation. Hyperinflation means its inflation is like, going up, skyrocketing. Now there was some period around 2008, we remember, inflation rate was billion%. Now if you look at this chart, now here our inflation rate in this chart, what is the rate? I told you it's maximum in this chart is 8%. 8%. Now can you imagine compared to that, in this case, in inflation in Zimbabwe, it's like billion%. So daily inflation rate was rising closer to 100%. So every moment prices like doubling. So can you imagine it? So it went up actually like this. So what is the outcome? Now this is the currency note of Central Bank of Zimbabwe. Look at the value of this currency note, $100 trillion. So this currency note is $100 trillion. Can you imagine? To buy a loaf of bread, average Zimbabwe person is spending something like 10-20 notes of this trillion note. So loaf of bread is $20 trillion. Maybe more than that. I saw some photos on Google, probably you may search and see. People were carrying, money like bricks, like boxes large, to buy goods and services. If you drive on the roads in Zimbabwe and if you stop somewhere, beggars will knock your car, your window. They will ask for some, money. They're not asking for $1 or $2, right? They're asking for something like $50 trillion, something like that. So they are like beggars of billionaires or trillionaires. So it's the situation created by high inflation in Zimbabwe. Even now, their inflation rate is high. So money becomes very useless when you have high inflation rate. Same happened very recently during last few years in Venezuela. Venezuela is a beautiful country, a nice country with rich oil resources and all that, and with a country with very beautiful girls. You may have observed most of the time Miss Universe or Miss World is a Venezuelan girl. So very nice country. But what has happened very recently? Due to high inflation, mismanagement of the economy, I can see some noises. Can you mute, please? I can hear some noises actually. Please mute. Uh, so this second picture, this one, shows the condition on Venezuela. In Venezuela, on the roads, you will see currency notes like this. Why? People have just thrown currency because you can't do anything with this note, right? So money becomes nothing. Have you ever seen currency like this on the roads? I have heard during World War II in Germany, a similar situation was there. Inflation rate was really high, and people were, taking wheelbarrows of money to buy their daily needs. So this is the situation when you have high inflation. Money becomes worthless, means purchasing power will reduce. So in this chart, you will see, the very last chart, you will see when you have certain level of inflation, how the value gets eroded. If you have 4% inflation, it will be like this red line. If you have high 5%, the erosion will be more. If you have 6%, erosion will be more. If you have 10-15%, erosion will be much steeper. So what will like 1,000 rupees today look like tomorrow if there is inflation? So it's eroding, the value gets eroded. So we can very easily conclude inflation is reducing welfare. Why? Erosion of value of money means it's reducing your welfare. If you have purchasing power, less purchasing power, your purchasing power reducing means your welfare is affected. You were able to buy one loaf of bread today using 100 rupees. If tomorrow the price is double, the price goes up to 200 rupees per loaf of bread. Now you can only buy half of the bread if you have 100 rupees. Okay? So it's reducing welfare. There are a lot of macroeconomic consequences of high inflation like this. So to understand that, actually we can use the Fisher equation. I have already done it. This my equals py or pt equation, which simply indicates money into velocity equals prices and output. So if you make velocity constant and output constant, money and prices are related. If there is an increase in money, you will increase in prices. If you see a reduction in money, you will see reduction in prices. So increase in money with constant velocity and output, or reduction in money with constant velocity or output, will change prices. This is not only theory. Some people say, I have heard this is theory. Even in Sri Lanka, very recently, we can, see some people say, okay, don't worry, you can put any amount of money to the economy as you want. There won't be any inflation or any price pressures. People say. But when you say like that, you have to look at the reality. So this chart will provide real data. So this chart is actually up to 2011. If you update this chart, you might have a different picture, but still the broad idea is the same. what is the message of this chart? What do we have here? We have global rate of money growth here, global money supply, and global inflation, which means total money supply in the world and the prices. So we have plotted these together. What can you see? All these dots indicates countries. If you look at these dots, you will see these are countries: Russia, Hungary, South Korea, Singapore. Likewise, countries we have in these dots. So similar chart we call it as a scatter plot. If you put two variables in this way, you call it a scatter plot. And in a scatter plot, you can derive a trend line. This red line is a trend line. What can you say? What is your feedback about money and inflation? You can unmute and tell me. Based on the trend line, what is your conclusion?
Increasing inflation, sir.
Sorry?
Increasing inflation.
Increasing inflation, which means between the two variables, what kind of a relationship you observe?
Positive relationship.
Positive relationship. Money and inflation positively related. Even Sri Lanka here is here in this chart. Now, if you look at, not only that, there are different colors given to different countries. You will see developed markets in blue color. So these developed markets are, in this area. What does that mean? Their money growth is low, their inflation rate is low. There are purple countries which are developing countries, emerging countries. Relatively, their money growth is high, inflation is high. There are countries with red color. These are outliers. What can you see? BRICS countries means something like, Latin American countries are there. Venezuela included here. I think Russia included here. What can you see? High money growth, high inflation. So you cannot deny this relationship. There are actual data. This is up to 2011, but later on, there was some, weakening of this relationship because of the global crisis. In the global crisis, demand went down. People were, given more money, injected more money. Still, you don't see price pressures. That's a different thing. That's during extraordinary times. But in normal times, it is a fact. It is a global truth. When you have more money, you spend more. So that creates price pressures. So to understand that theoretically, or based on some numbers, you can use this slide. Now let's say we have overall stock of money 1000, velocity of money is 2, output is 100. What is the price level that you get? Simply we apply this equation, MV equal PY, right? To derive the price, you can change the equation a bit, saying MV divided by Y equals P. So here we have done it. M means 1000, V means 2, V is 2, and Y is 100. So 1000 into 2 divided by 100 means price is 20. Okay. Clear? Very simply, we apply this quantity equation. You can use this way, or you can change the equation a bit to derive the price. So assume if money doubles, the amount of money has doubled. It increases to 2000. So what will happen to this price? If velocity is constant, output is constant, if you double the money, this price should double. It should be 40. Or even you can calculate it. Now money becomes not 1000, it becomes 2000. Velocity is the same, income is the same, output is the same. So prices would increase to 40. What happens if money increases by 4 times? Can someone tell me the price of this good? Now let's say money increases 4 times, by 4 times. It becomes 4000. What is the price now?
₹80.
80 rupees. So it's a very clear, simple logic. In real world, it may not be the same, right? In real world, maybe this velocity is changing. Now actually in modern world, this velocity does not stay constant. In modern world, you know, we have various new instruments. Remember I told you last week when we were doing calculations of money, velocity can change due to payment innovations, due to internet payments and all that. Actual currency velocity could be different. Still, with the change in the velocity, if you change money level, the prices would change. Why? Because you can't change this 100 in the short run, which means the output. You can't change it. Gradually you can. It will take time. Overnight or in a shorter period of time, you can't, unless you are a magician or you are the Sakradeyo, he can. Otherwise, no one will be able to change this output in the short run. So I don't want to prove anymore. I think it's very clear. We have a clear relationship between inflation and money. So we should ensure adequate, appropriate money should be available in the economy to avoid price increases or undue price decreases. Even price decreases are not good, right? Large price decreases are discouraging producers because they should also get a reasonable good price. So we don't expect too much of price increases or too much of price decreases in the economy. Some price increase can be accommodated. Some price change can be acceptable. Prices will not stay like, like a rock forever. It should change, but change should be gradual and it should be less volatile. So that idea leads to a new concept called price stability. Price stability means general price level is stable over the period. Stable means it is changing but low and at a stable, less volatile rate. So low and stable inflation is referred to as price stability.
Excuse me, sir. Can you explain what is velocity?
Oh my God, I have been explaining velocity for ages. Velocity is the circulation speed of money. Remember, I discussed last week, in depth. Circulation speed of money. If you inject 1 unit of currency, what is the speed of that currency? Which means used for transactions. how did we calculate velocity? Remember, we did some calculation also. We divided
Yeah,
nominal
GDP.
GDP. Yes.
GDP divided by M2B.
Yeah. Remember. I hope I made it clear even last week. Okay. Happy with the definition?
Yeah, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Now price stability. Price stability is low and stable inflation. We have a chart here presenting inflation rate. Now, I will basically mark two periods of this chart, A and B. I'm asking you few questions now. You have to answer me. Okay. Now, in this chart, which period is reflecting price stability? Which period is reflecting price instability? In period A, the circle A, is it stable prices or unstable prices?
Unstable prices.
Unstable. Why? Inflation is high and volatile. See, inflation is sometimes it's 15-20%, and it is volatile. Sometimes it goes to 25%. Likewise, it's changing drastically. So it's unstable. So you can't observe price stability in this period A. So obviously, period B, what you can observe? Price stability. Why? Inflation rate is low. See, inflation is hovering around 5% or less than 5%. And also, it is less volatile. You don't see large increases or decreases. So in this period, prices are stable. So period B is indicating price stability. Now this is a precondition, very important, crucial condition for increasing economic growth and economic welfare. So people need to have, an economy needs to have less inflation for economic growth. Why is that? Economic growth is coming out from the decisions of economic stakeholders, their activities. Investors, government, consumers, foreigners, all their economic activities are defining or deciding the growth rate in the economy. And when they have high growth, that is leading to high economic welfare. But to have high growth, you should have economic decision taken. So economic decisions will be taken by the stakeholders when you have stable prices. Why is that? When prices are volatile like this, people cannot take decisions. Investors, they can't take any decision. They don't know where the prices are moving, at what rate. Consumers, they don't know what's happening. Foreigners will not come. Why? They can't predict inflation, the economy. Decisions will be made very clearly when prices are predictable like this, in this period. So in this period, you will have economic growth, delta, let's say, let's G. Let's put as delta G. In this period, delta G is questionable because economic stakeholders cannot actively engage in economic activity. So during price volatility, your welfare is affected. During predictable prices, which means price stability, you can achieve economic welfare. Now the question is, how do you achieve these stable prices? That is by a certain policy called monetary policy. Monetary policy is used to achieve price stability. In other words, these predictable prices in this chart, predictable and low stable prices in this chart is an outcome of monetary policy. Clear? Any question before I move to the next part? Are you there, students? All clear? I only hear few voices normally. How about others? Hello.
So,
Yes.
is there any monetary policies like this, how to say, price stability? So monetary policy is used to achieve the price stability. Is there any kind? Is there anything apart from that to stable the monetary policy?
To stable the prices. I think
Yes.
that's the question you asked, right? Now, prices can be stabilized mainly by monetary policy. That is the, truth. But in certain periods, even the government can help stabilizing prices. Now, for example, there are I told you, there are some periods, let's say, due to issues in harvest, prices go up. What can the government do? Monetary policy cannot do anything there. Why? Prices are increasing because of shortage of rice. Monetary policy can't do anything there. Monetary policy cannot produce rice, no. It cannot control that price as well. Why? It is because of the shortage of rice. In such scenario, government can help. How does the government can address that issue? If you observe what's happening happened in the recent past, we had this example. Remember, prices went up for rice, doubled. I remember one variety of rice. I think it's very common, famous variety, that kiri samba. I think it went up by 100 rupees. Central bank did not jump and say, okay, we will control kiri samba price. No, they can't. But government announced some policies. What the government said?
Price ceiling.
Yes, they put some price ceilings. Also, they said, okay, we will import rice. Remember? So likewise, the government can control such short-term price increases due to supply side issues. Take another example. Let's say this rice price doubled because people started eating more rice. Let's say you earn some money, and government decides, okay, we will increase your salary. We will increase your salary by 100%. So your salary, let's say 50,000 becomes 100,000 overnight. Now what will happen? You have more income, more money in your hands. What you will do now? You want to eat more rice, nothing else. You demanded high salary for rice consumption. Now you demand rice twice than the earlier demand. Now what will happen? Prices get doubled because you cannot produce rice overnight or in the short run unless you produce this plastic rice. I have heard in some countries there are some issues like that. So you can't do it. Prices would increase. In such scenario, the central bank can enter to control the price. How? Central bank can use its policies to curtail your demand. Even though you have high money, higher income, now the central bank can control your demand for rice. For example, central bank increases interest rates. Now you see, rather than consuming, money, rice, you can, invest that money in assets because interest rates are high. Or central banks comes and absorbs your excess money to control this demand. So is it clear? Not only the monetary policy, even the fiscal policy can help stabilizing prices. But that is price pressures arising due to supply side. So I think you asked a very good question. Prices can increase due to demand as well as supply. Monetary policy can address this demand side pressures. Supply side pressure can be addressed by the government or the fiscal policy. But what matters is demand side inflation because it is long term. It cannot be, brought down short in a shorter period. Clear?
Yes, sir.
I like that question. Very good question. Let's move on. Now we define monetary policy. I told you by name, monetary policy is all about money. So monetary policy can be defined as the process by which the central bank influences the cost and availability of money. So in this definition, we have three important elements. What is that? What are they? Central bank. Monetary policy is practiced by a central bank. Money is controlled by the central bank. So in that sense, policy related to money is practiced by the central bank. So monetary policy is a central bank policy. Central banks have given that function because historically it was seen that government is not in a perform this function. The reason is very clear. Governments, they would like to have, more demand, more income, like economic growth every time. Government does not have a serious concern on price stability. They are much worried more on economic growth. So in that sense, the government may not be in a position to take decisions then and there when they see price pressures. So as a result, that function is given to another independent institution, central bank. Central bank will, they are basically expected to take decisions on a timely basis whenever they see price pressures in the economy. So monetary policies, they are tool. So that is one element, important element. And the other two elements are central banks are influencing two aspects of money, that is cost and availability of money. Cost is the interest rate. I think I defined you, remember? Interest rate is the cost of money. And the other aspect is availability of money, means money supply, or we broadly call it as liquidity. The amount of liquidity in the system is controlled by the central bank. Or interest rate is basically controlled by the central bank. Those are two arms or aspects of monetary policy. In this smart art, you will see implementation of monetary policy is basically controlling the level of money or the price of money. Level of money means money supply, price of money means interest rate. Central banks can manipulate one of these two variables in their policy decisions. Either they can control money supply or interest rate as they want. So this entire action, we call it as monetary policy of a central bank. Now, when the central bank wants to do this, they should have some instruments. Now, this monetary policy, central bank simply they cannot say, okay, now inflation is there, we want to change monetary policy, we are changing monetary policy. So if they announce like that, nothing will happen. No one will care. Who cares? The central bank, right? So it's only words. But if central bank can do something in line with their words, that is affecting the economy or affecting the economy. These actions, we call them as monetary policy actions implemented through tools of the central bank. I think this word is very popular term, tools. So central banks are using tools to influence the economy. So before we come to this tool, there is a large framework. I'm not going to discuss that framework because it's not really relevant to us. Probably next year when you do central banking subject, you will learn this in detail. But here what we are doing is basically a kind of an overview of monetary policy. So I'm just, by defining the monetary policy, I'm just jumping to tools, how the monetary policy is exercised using these tools. That's the link. Then we discuss these tools because those are the areas focus in your exam.
Sir,
Yes.
I have a question. There's when central bank or government using the tools, so if we haven't money, only we are trying to get loans from the other country. So why we create money if when we need? Is there anything? Why we are paying much interest for the other countries?
Okay, good question. Now, in your economy, you don't have money. If you don't have money, you can produce. True. That is the central bank role. Let's say you have less amount of rupees or the price of the rupee is high, then the central bank can do something. They can issue money through their tools. That's correct. But what you are referring is basically why the central bank does not take loans, right? You have to be very clear on that. The government takes loans from other countries. Clear? Not the central bank. Central
Okay,
bank
sir.
may be supporting that function, intermediating, but central bank does not need such, money to be borrowed from the other countries because it's not the central bank role. Its role is limited to that domestic money. Okay. But why the government takes foreign money? Or why central bank supports that? Can someone answer? If you understand it, I think that is the answer for many economic misperceptions. Why the government borrows money from other countries?
So if we make more money, our currency will be gone down. That's why government will buying foreign currency the loans from other country.
Hmm. You got a point there. But what I'm asking, when there is less amount of domestic money, let's say rupees, central bank can, inject that money.
To reduce the money inflation.
Yeah, by controlling that amount of money, you can control inflation. That's for sure. So why the governments borrow money from other countries, foreign money? What's the reason?
Due
Price
to the low cost of interest?
Sorry.
Due to the low cost of money?
Also increase the asset of foreign currency.
Okay, all will happen. But
Exchange
what
rate
is
will
the
happen.
reason? So what you say is the outcomes. What will happen actually? I'm asking what is the reason?
for the price stability.
No, foreign money does not have any relationship with price stability. Of course, there is indirectly through the channel of money supply. But why governments borrow from other countries? Shall we try once more?
Exchange rate between the country borrow is higher than our rate.
Sorry.
The exchange rate is higher than our exchange value of money. So if we borrow from $1 in America, it's high more amount in Sri Lanka. That's why we are borrowing.
I think what you said has some indication of the answer, not the exactly answer I expect. Shall I tell you without taking much time then? Now, when you don't have rupees, central bank can issue it. You can print that money and issue. You know how money is printed now? You can do it. Why governments are borrowing foreign money? Reason is very clear. You can't print foreign money, isn't it? Can we print dollars as the Central Bank of Sri Lanka? Can we print sterling, yuan, yen, euro? Can we? There are some people I have seen this. I don't know person in the area. I think in Nigambu I have seen he has printed dollars. That's a different case. But as a country, can we print dollars? No, you have to borrow.
Yeah, but
Or you have to attract such dollars through various activities like tourism, remittances, exports, investments. When such money is not sufficient, you have to borrow. Probably let's say you need to pay a loan, foreign currency loan. Now these days it's a classic example. Now these days we get very few amount of dollars because of tourism is low, exports are not that high, remittances not that high, investments are low. So foreign currency inflow to the country is low. In other words, simple terms, dollars are less. Fewer dollars are available in the market. But we have some obligations. We have to make some payments, right? For example, you have to pay for oil. You have to pay for medicine. You have to pay for, let's say, this vaccination. And also on top of that, you have to pay some loans. Loans you cannot, defer. No? Some loans you can, but sometimes you have to pay on time. When you don't have money to pay dollars, then you have to borrow. You
Can't we exchange and pay it?
exchange with whom?
With the that was a problem.
To exchange, there should money should be available with someone. Now let's say you can exchange, you give rupees and get dollars from, let's say, from a bank. They should also have foreign currency, to do that, right? No one will exchange our rupees for dollars. No, let's say a US citizen or an investor, will he give dollars for our rupees? No. So I think reason is very clear. You cannot print foreign currency. You have to find foreign currency through these alternative ways. So this attracting foreign currency by way of these remittances, exports, tourism, foreign loans, investments, it's the role of the government. Clear?
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So we are worried about, or we are talking about, the central bank tools that affects domestic money supply and the interest rates. Okay. Now, what I am saying, actually, this is not merely my words. This is what is written in the law. I'm going to discuss central bank in banking in a future discussion. So there you will learn we have a particular law for that. In central bank of for the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, we have a particular law called Monetary Law Act. That Monetary Law Act very clearly mentions what can you do, what you cannot do. So printing, injecting domestic money is possible under the law. Okay. So here we are talking about the policy instruments. So there are number of policy instruments held by a central bank. I'm going to discuss few important tools that are mainly used by a central bank and which are very influential on the economy. So what are these tools? First one, policy interest rates. Policy interest rates, sometimes we call them as repo rates of central banks, discount rates of central banks, or benchmark interest rates of central banks. Sometimes you call it central bank rates. Whatever the term used, these are the basic interest rates in the economy or policy interest rates. So these rates are only available, or that is only applicable for the central bank. Central bank is changing its monetary policy position by changing these policy interest rates. So if the central bank want to change its monetary policy, it can change the policy interest rates. Change means either increasing or decreasing. How do you define these policy interest rates? Here, the second bullet gives you the definition. These are the rates that the central bank is prepared to absorb or provide liquidity to the financial system. Liquidity means what? It's money. So if you have more money in the economy, I told you, more money is problematic. You have to absorb that excess money. Or if you have fewer money in the economy, less liquidity, which means you should provide liquidity to the economy. Those absorption of money and provision of money is happening at these policy interest rates. In other terms, very simply, central bank is dealing with financial institutions, not with public. So these policy rates are the rates that these financial institutions can come and ask for money from the central bank, or they can deposit their excess money with the central banks. Why these policy interest rates are important? It provides a guidance to all interest rates in the economy. For example, let's say the central bank is changing its policy rates. Policy rates are increasing. What will happen? Policy rates are increasing means financial institutions dealing with the central bank will have to face higher interest rate now. So as a result, what will happen? Market interest rates will also go up. What is the outcome? Demand for credit will go down now. Supply of funds will go up now, which means, in other words, people will have less amount of loans, more deposits. So when loans go down, what will happen? People will not have more money in their hands, because people get money into their hands through loans also. So curtailing loans means less amount of money in hands, which means less aggregate demand. When aggregate demand goes down, we have seen prices are going down, remember? So policy rate changes will have a lasting impact on the prices. So this is the first important tool. Second important tool, open market operations. Open market operations is the process of buying and selling securities by the central bank at those policy rates. Remember, I told you policy rates are important. Now I told you, when economy does not have enough money, central bank is injecting money. When economy have more money, central bank is absorbing money. How does the central bank inject money? You can't just, give money as donations to the economy. How does the central bank inject money?
To provide the loans to the financial institutions.
Yeah, that's a one way, direct loans. You are correct. What is the most popular way? Direct loans can be provided to financial institutions, that's correct. The most popular way to provide money to the economy is what? Central bank is exchanging securities with the commercial banks. So when central bank is buying securities, S is security, it gives money to the economy. So this process will inject money. On the other hand, when central bank wants to absorb money, it will sell securities to the commercial banks. So when you sell, commercial banks, they buy those securities by giving their money. So then that will lead to absorb money. So this process we call it as open market operations of the central bank. Buying and selling securities by the central bank. Why they buy and sell securities? To inject or supply money. So when the central bank inject or supply money, that will change the ability of the banks to give loans or not. When banks have more money, they can give more loans. When banks have less money, they cannot give loans. Right? So as I said, when central banks selling more securities, it will absorb money from the banking system. That will reduce banks' ability to lend. On the other hand, if central bank purchases security, that will inject money to the banking system, that will increase the ability to lend. So this entire process is called as OMOs, or open market operations. If you look at the diagram, I think it will be very clear. Why the central bank is doing this thing? Again, remember our ultimate objective is what? To control inflation, right? To control the price, ensure the price stability. So in this chart or diagram, you can see, now let's start from the right hand side. Now let's say prices are high, inflation is there. So central bank wants to control inflation now. What does the central bank do to control inflation? Now interest rates have to increase, or excess money have to be absorbed. How does the central bank do it? Central bank is buying bonds. Buying bonds means buying securities and giving money to the other way around. Central bank is selling bonds. Should be sell, right? If you are not clear, write down the word. Central bank is selling bonds. It has bonds, government securities. It is selling. It sells those securities. So when central bank sells bonds, money will be absorbed from banks. So banks are giving money, buying securities from the central bank. Now what happens? Money available with the banks will be now low, reduced. So low money supply means interest rates are going up. So individuals, companies, now they will reduce their demand. Aggregate demand will go down. Prices will also go down. On the opposite, let's say central bank says, okay, there is no inflation, but economy is also not growing, which means some recession is there. So now the central bank wants to support the economy by way of coming out from this recession, and also allowing some inflation is okay now. How can the central bank do it? Now central bank is buying bonds. Buy. As a result, money is injected to the economy. So when money is injected to the economy, to the banks, now the bank's money supply will go up. When money supply goes up, interest rates now go down. When interest rates are going down, people will borrow more money, their activities increase, so aggregate demand now will increase, economic activities will increase, and also prices will also increase. That's not a problem at the moment because already prices are low. Some increase can be allowed. Okay. So open market operations are in modern world, modern central banks, this is the main tool of a central bank. So mostly this 1 and 2 works together. 1 and 2 works together, which means central banks are conducting open market operations using their policy interest rates. Third one, reserve requirement. I think this is familiar for you. Reserve requirement is what is the proportion kept by commercial banks at the central bank from their deposits. You call them as reserves, reserve assets. Remember, this reserve requirement is a determinant of banks' ability to create money. Remember that money multiplier? Money multiplier is decided by the reserve requirement. Remember, the speed of money creation, the amount of money creation is determined by the reserve requirement. So if the central bank increases reserve requirement, money multiplier goes down. If reserve requirement is reduced, money multiplier will go up. I hope you remember this thing we discussed last week. So reserve requirement is affecting the money supply and interest rates through the money multiplier. If the central bank wants to increase interest rates indirectly, what can they do? As I said, they can increase reserve requirement, money multiplier will be reduced, money supply will be reduced, interest rates will be increasing now, right? When interest rate increases, money creation will be lower. Aggregate demand now go down, right? Opposite, when the reserve requirement is reduced, money multiplier will increase and money supply will also increase, interest rates go down, aggregate demand will increase, and that will create price pressures. Okay. Reserve requirement. In some countries, this reserve requirement is called as CR. Not we are using RR. Sometimes they call it CR, which means cash reserve requirement. Cash reserve requirement. Okay. So those are the most important instruments of the central bank monetary policy. Interest rates, open market operations, reserve requirements. Other than that, there are some other instruments used by central banks, right? What are these some other instruments? Special deposit. Central bank can tell banks to keep a certain percentage of money or a deposit in certain activities. Now, for example, probably you may have heard a central bank action called imposing margin requirements. Margin requirement means a deposit. For example, a commercial bank opens an LC to import a vehicle. So this LC is open in foreign currency to import the vehicle. To discourage it, central bank can say, okay, you need to keep a rupee deposit at the bank equivalent to the LC value. You call it a margin, special deposits. Then moral suasion. Moral suasion means central bank can say, okay, for the banks, The central bank is giving some instructions, some discussions. Central bank is, in a informal way, they're trying to communicate with the banks on certain actions. In Sinhala, you call this as Shishta Prayoga, which means central bank is using some strategies through discussions of the banks and, having some close rapport with them, try to adjust their behavior according to central bank objectives or needs, moral suasion. Direct control. Central bank can issue direct control in order to achieve certain targets. For example, central bank can say, okay, you cannot increase credit more than this. You cannot give credit to this sector. Likewise, it can impose some certain restrictions. Central bank can do foreign transaction also. Foreign transactions in the sense not foreigner with the foreigners. People who are having foreign currency locally, with them, central bank can do foreign exchange transactions. Buying and selling foreign exchange. Let's say with a commercial bank, central bank buy foreign currency of a commercial bank. If central bank buys foreign currency, remember, it injects rupee. If central bank sells foreign currency, it absorbs rupee. So one of the popular instrument in this foreign transactions is swaps transactions of central bank. Swaps means central bank is exchanging one currency with another currency. Let's say with a commercial bank, central bank is exchanging dollar for rupees, or vice versa. All these are instruments used by central banks in their monetary policies. Next set of instruments, I have put them in a shaded area because these are some special instruments. Nowadays, central banks are using macroprudential tools. Macro means by definition broad, not only one area or one section, broader section of the economy. Now, after the global financial crisis, central banks have realized you cannot ignore the developments in the financial sector. For example, excessive borrowings, excessive loans to certain sectors, you cannot ignore, because global financial crisis happened because of these excessive loans to mortgages. So as a result, central bank have realized they have to keep close eye on the financial sector. In the financial sector, not only on one institution or two, on the entire financial sector. And also take policies to address risk in the broad financial sector. So these tools used for ensure the resilience or to avoid the systemic risk in the financial sector, we call them as macroprudential tools. Macroprudential tools. These are also practiced by the central bank. It's not only addressing price stability, that also address financial system stability. For both perspectives, you can use it. Most popular macroprudential tool is loan to value ratio. I think bankers would know loan to value ratio is when you want to take a loan, banks are not giving you 100% of that loan. They only give you a percentage. I think the average is 90% of your loan, if your requirement actually. If you need 100,000, the bank will not give you entire 100,000. It will give you 90,000. So that 90,000 is the loan to value. The value is your 100, but you only get 90. Central bank can change this ratio. Central bank can say, okay, not 90%, you give 50% to the customer. Now you ask for 100,000, but you only get 50,000. So you have a shortage of money, and that discourages you from borrowing. So you call it loan to value ratio, very popular macroprudential tool. And also debt to income ratio means, I think it's very common. You get loans based on your income. Even that ratio can be changed by a central bank as a macroprudential tool. Okay. Second set of special tools are the unconventional monetary policies. Now, all we discuss up to now, conventional. Conventional means you can use it in normal time. Normal, if you see normal price pressures or normal economic downturns, you can use those things. But there are some unconventional or extraordinary periods in the economy in terms of crisis. During the crisis periods, you cannot use these instruments effectively. So in the crisis periods, central banks are using some other policies to stimulate the economy, to support the economy. Because during crisis periods, if this is the crisis, inflation rates are normally very low or negative. So you don't have any inflation risk there. Sometimes you have deflation there. So as a result, central bank can support the economy during this period to come out from the recession. So if the central bank supports the economy, you call it they are trying to stimulate the economy. When they try to stimulate the economy during the crisis, you call them as unconventional monetary policy tools. There are, I think you are familiar with these terms, quantitative easing we discussed. Remember last week under money supply, we discussed quantitative easing. Quantitative easing means central bank is buying more and more assets from the government. More treasury bill bonds purchased by the government. When it buys more treasury bill bonds, it will inject money. Quantitative easing. And also another instrument is credit easing. Again, central bank is buying bonds from the private sector. Even stocks, equity can be bought by a central bank. So when the central bank is buying private bonds, private equity, it's injecting more money. So during the global financial crisis, most of the central banks, Federal Reserve, European Central Bank, Bank of Japan, Australian Central Bank, Bank of England, all these practice this unconventional policy by way of quantitative or credit easing. Not only that, sometimes you can have negative interest rates. Normally, you know, interest rates are positive. What happens if interest rates are negative? When interest rates are negative, people will not deposit money with the bank. If you deposit, you have to pay to the bank because rate is negative. Why these negative rates are maintained? Because to encourage people to borrow and spend. So during extraordinary times, this is encouraged by the central bank to spend more by the public having negative interest rates. Okay. Any question up to this point?
Sir, that's mean if our interest rates also gone down, that's mean when we are in the current situation, we don't pay much interest for the deposit. So
Yeah.
that also coming under negative interest rate, is it?
It's not negative actually, but as you said, it's low interest rates. Because interest rates are low, people are encouraged to borrow and spend. Then that will encourage economic activities. In Sri Lanka, we have not exercised negative interest rates. Because why? our interest rate were at very high levels, 14, 15%. You can bring down, let's say 7%, 8%, 5%. To that level you can bring. If you bring it to that level, it is a low interest rate. Why these advanced countries have negative rates? Their interest rates were anyway low. In advanced countries, normally their interest rates are maximum 3 to 4%. Very rarely they have interest rates more than 5%. So they have reduced interest rates near to zero. But still, it's not effective. Even at the zero rates, people are not active. Then they have made it negative. When it is negative, then people, have some encouragement to spend. Got it?
Yes, sir.
So this is my last slide for the day. Now, why the central bank is changing monetary policy using these instruments? So when central bank change in this monetary policy, we can have two directions of monetary policy: expansionary monetary policy, contractionary monetary policy. In an expansion, central bank is helping to speed up the economy or encourage economic growth, which means central bank is encouraging people to spend, aggregate demand to increase, even the prices could increase during that time. Expansionary policy. Why central bank is having expansionary policy? When the central bank is seeing when it sees some low growth, low inflation. On the other hand, central banks are practicing contractionary monetary policy, which means to give some tight condition to the economy when it wants to slow down the growth and aggregate demand to control inflation. So in that sense, central bank is focusing on two variables: growth, inflation. Inflation is the key, but growth is also monitored. When growth is going very high, we call it economy is overheating. When economy is overheating, that creates more demand pressures and more price pressures. So central bank is raising interest rates, which means contractionary monetary policy. Sometimes central banks is low economic growth. Growth is low, inflation is low. Then central bank thinks we should give some boost to the economy. Then the central bank is reducing interest rates, which means expansionary monetary policy. Similarly, by looking at inflation rate, when the central bank is observing high inflation, they need to bring down inflation. So they are raising interest rates to control demand, that is contractionary monetary policy. If inflation is low, as I said, you can allow some inflation to pick up by reducing interest rates, which means expansionary monetary policy. So the rule of thumb means normally what you do when economic growth is expanding, going high, or when inflation is high, central bank is having contractionary monetary policy. When growth is high, inflation is high. Inflation is denoted by this phi. When both these are high, monetary policy is tightened, contractionary policy. When growth is low, inflation is low, central bank is relaxing monetary policy, which means expansionary monetary policy. So in a monetary policy tightening, interest rates go up. In monetary policy relaxing, interest rates go down. Clear? In the next slide, I have explained this situation. Okay. Now, before you come to the class next time, I have a question for you. Question given here, Q. What is the current monetary policy stance of the central bank? You are recommended to read annual report chapter 7 before you come to the next class. I think if you read the first section, first part, there you will have a clear idea on the current monetary policy stance of the central bank. So with your knowledge, with your readings, I'll be starting from this point onwards next week, and we'll have a discussion going forward. And after that, I'm moving to interest rates also on the same day, and we will complete this discussion entirely. Okay. Now, don't forget, next week, let me end the slideshow. As I told you last week, next week we are having classes starting at 7. So please make sure you log into the Google Teams by 7 a.m. on next Sunday. That is on 8th August. Remember? Do you need any reminder in between? I don't think.
No, sir, we are receiving anyway mail from IBSL.
Okay, great. So we are starting at 7 a.m. next week, 7 to 9. Okay. So we can wind up the session at this point. Monetary policy is an interesting area, right? It is very, touching our hearts on a day-to-day basis, because any action of the central bank is very close to our day-to-day life, because it will have an impact on the interest rates and their behavior. So please make sure that you understand it very well, because it's an important area of our day-to-day life. Okay, so shall we stop here and meet next week at 7 a.m. I wish you a very good weekend. Stay safe. Stay safe in the sense I would repeat it, stay safe, because from tomorrow onwards, the country is broadly open. Public sector is recalled for work. No more work from home. You will be traveling. Inter-provisional traveling is permitted. So I think we are exposed to a lot of risk in my way. So be safe. That's the reality. We have to open the country, that's for sure. But we have to keep ourselves very protective and safe, because the pandemic is not over. It's continuing. It's at some different stage now. So you have to ensure that you, your family members, your relatives, close friends, everyone is safe by ensuring very good health habits by you. Okay, so stay safe. I'll see you next week at 7 a.m. Thank you, and have a good day, good week.